The diplomatic station Harmony 7 floated in the empty space between two star systems. It was built for meetings like this one. The station belonged to no one, which made it perfect for dangerous conversations. Tai-Ho Kim stood in the main docking bay, watching the alien ship approach through the thick glass windows. His hands were steady, but his heart was beating fast. Today would change everything. After 50 years of Cold War, the Velkari Empire had finally agreed to talk. "They're almost here," said Somin Park, the station commander. She stood beside him, her uniform crisp and clean. "Are you ready for this?" Tai-Ho nodded. He had been preparing for months. As the chief diplomatic attaché, he would be the first human to formally meet a Velkari face-to-face. The weight of that responsibility sat heavy on his shoulders. "Remember what we discussed?" said Jae-Sung Lee, the security chief. "They're telepaths. They can read minds. Don't think about anything classified." Tai-Ho almost smiled. "That's like telling someone not to think about elephants. The harder you try, the more you think about them." "Just stay calm," Somin said. "We've been planning this for years. Everything will be fine." The Velkari ship was beautiful and terrifying. It looked like a living thing made of dark metal and flowing curves. No human ship had ever looked like that. As it docked with the station, Tai-Ho felt a chill run down his spine. "They're different from us," he said quietly. "Really different?" "That's why we need this meeting," Somin replied. "We need to understand each other before someone starts shooting." The docking bay filled with the sound of metal connecting to metal. Air hissed as the two ships sealed together. Through the airlock window, Tai-Ho could see movement in the alien ship. "Here they come," Jae-Sung said. The airlock opened with a soft whoosh. 3 figures stepped through, and Tai-Ho got his first real look at the Velkari. They were tall and thin, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow slightly. Their eyes were large and completely black like pools of oil. They moved with a strange grace, as if they were floating instead of walking. The one in front wore robes that shimmered with colors that had no names. "Welcome to Harmony 7, Somin said, stepping forward. "I am Commander Park. This is our chief diplomatic attaché, Tai-Ho Kim." The lead Velkari studied them with those dark eyes. When she spoke, her voice was like music, but cold music, the kind played at funerals. "I am Ambassador Velthara of the Velkari Empire. We have come to determine if your species is worthy of formal contact." Tai-Ho felt a flash of anger at her words. Worthy? As if humans were pets asking for approval, but he pushed the feeling down and stepped forward with a diplomat's smile. "We're honored by your presence," he said. "We hope this can be the beginning of a peaceful relationship between our peoples." Velthara's head tilted slightly, like a bird studying an interesting bug. "Peaceful? Yes, that would be preferable." There was something in the way she said it that made Tai-Ho nervous, as if peace was just one option among many, and not necessarily the best one. "Perhaps we could begin with a traditional greeting," Somin suggested. "A simple exchange to show good faith." Velthara nodded slowly. "Yes, that would be appropriate. In Velkari tradition, we share thoughts to ensure honesty. There can be no deception when minds touch." Tai-Ho felt his stomach drop. Share thoughts? No one had mentioned this in the briefings. He looked at Somin, who seemed just as surprised. "I'm not sure we understand," Somin said carefully. "It is simple," Velthara said. "I will read your attaché's mind. This will tell me if humans can be trusted. If your thoughts are pure, we can proceed. If not..." She left the sentence hanging like a sword. Jae-Sung took a step forward. "That wasn't part of the agreed protocol." Velthara's dark eyes fixed on him. "Do you have something to hide?" The tension in the room rose like heat from a fire. Tai-Ho could see this going wrong very quickly. One wrong word and 50 years of careful preparation would be wasted. "It's fine," he said, surprising everyone, including himself. "I have nothing to hide." "Tai-Ho," Somin said quietly. "You don't have to do this." But he was already walking toward the alien ambassador. "If this is what it takes for peace, then let's do it." Velthara smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "How refreshing. A human with courage. Very well. This will only take a moment." She raised her hand toward Tai-Ho's face. Her fingers were long and thin, with too many joints. As they got closer, he felt something strange in the air, like the moment before lightning strikes. "Do not resist," Velthara said softly. "It will only make things more difficult." Tai-Ho nodded and closed his eyes. He tried to empty his mind, to think of nothing important. But that was impossible. His brain was full of memories, fears, hopes, dreams. and 1,000 random thoughts all tangled together like a ball of wire. Velthara's fingers touched his forehead. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Tejo felt something cold slide into his mind like ice water. It was gentle at first, careful like someone tiptoeing through a library. But then everything changed. The cold presence in his mind suddenly recoiled as if it had touched fire. Tejo felt a wave of shock and confusion that wasn't his own. Through the mental connection, he could sense Velthara's thoughts, and they were full of panic. What was happening? This wasn't how it was supposed to work. Every species she had ever encountered had minds like clean rooms, organized and logical. But this human mind was chaos. It was like trying to drink from a waterfall made of lightning and music and screaming children and beautiful sunsets all at the same time. Velthara tried to pull back, but somehow she couldn't. The human mind was pulling her deeper, showing her things that made no sense. How could one creature hold so many contradictory thoughts? How could he be afraid and brave at the same time? How could he love people he had never met and hate people who had never hurt him? And the noise. Every other mind she had touched was quiet, controlled. This was like standing in the middle of a storm where every raindrop was a different song. The sheer volume of thought and emotion was overwhelming. Tejo opened his eyes just in time to see Velthara's face twist in horror. She tried to speak, but only a strangled sound came out. Then she began to scream. It was not a human scream. It was the sound of something breaking, something that had never been broken before. The other Velkhari rushed forward as their ambassador collapsed to the floor, her body shaking. "What did you do?" One of them shouted. "Nothing," Tejo said, backing away. "I didn't do anything." But he could see in their dark eyes that they didn't believe him. To them, he was no longer a diplomat seeking peace. He was a weapon that had just fired its first shot. Tejo sat in the station's medical bay, staring at his hands. They had been shaking for 2 hours ever since Velthara collapsed. The doctors said he was fine, but he didn't feel fine. He felt like he had broken something precious and irreplaceable. "How is she?" he asked when Somin entered the room. "Alive," Somin said, but her face was grim. "Barely conscious. The Velkhari medical team won't let our doctors near her. They're talking about leaving." Tejo closed his eyes. "This is my fault. You followed protocol. You agreed to their request. I should have known something would go wrong. I should have been more careful." Before Somin could answer, the door opened again. A woman walked in, but she wasn't entirely human. Her skin had a faint blue tint and her eyes were larger than normal, though not as large as a full Velkhari. Tejo had never seen anyone like her. "My name is Hyejin Choi," she said. "I'm the cultural liaison for this mission." "I've never seen you before," Somin said suspiciously. "I've been working behind the scenes. My mother was human. My father was Velkhari. I'm one of the few people who can speak to both species." Tejo stared at her. "That's impossible. First contact was today." Hyejin smiled sadly. "Official first contact was today. There have been unofficial meetings for decades. How do you think we learned their language?" Somin's face went hard. "Why wasn't I told about this?" "Because some secrets are too dangerous to share. But after what happened today, we need to talk. All of us." 20 minutes later, they sat in a secure conference room. With them was Dongwoo Nam, a neuroscientist who had arrived on the fastest ship available. His hair was messy and his clothes wrinkled from the rush. "Tell me what happened," he said to Tejo. "Every detail." Tejo described the mental contact, the feeling of something cold entering his mind, and then the sudden panic and withdrawal. It was like she touched something that burned her. Dr. Nam nodded thoughtfully. "And you felt her emotions?" "Yes, shock, confusion, terror. Like she had never experienced anything like my mind before." Hyejin leaned forward. "She hasn't. None of them have." "What do you mean?" Somin asked. "The Velkhari are telepaths," Hyejin explained. "But their telepathy works because every species they've encountered thinks in similar ways. Logical patterns, clear emotions, predictable responses. They read minds the way you might read a book." "And humans are different?" Dr. Nam asked. "Humans are chaos," Hyejin said simply. "Your minds work in ways that no other known species can understand. The Velkhari have contacted 47 different intelligent races. All of them think in organized logical patterns. All of them fear death above everything else. All of them make decisions based on survival." Tejo frowned. "That sounds reasonable." "It is reasonable. But humans aren't reasonable. You make art even when you're starving. You save strangers even when it puts you in danger. You believe in things you can't prove and fight for ideas that don't benefit you personally? Dr. Nam was taking notes rapidly. Go on. When Velthara touched Teho's mind, she expected to find the same logical pattern she had seen in every other species. Instead, she found something that shouldn't exist. A mind that can hold contradictory thoughts without breaking. A consciousness that values abstract concepts more than survival. That's just human nature, Soman said. Exactly. And human nature is completely alien to everyone else in the galaxy. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Dr. Nam spoke up. I need to examine her. The Velkari ambassador. If we can understand what happened, maybe we can prevent it from happening again. They won't let you near her, Somin said. They might, Hyejin said slowly. If I explain what we've learned, the Velkari value knowledge above everything else. If we can show them that this wasn't an attack but a discovery, they might be willing to cooperate. An hour later, they stood outside the Velkari quarters. Through the door they could hear strange musical sounds like wind chimes made of crystal. Hyejin spoke to the guards in the flowing Velkari language, her voice taking on the same musical quality. The conversation went on for several minutes. Finally, one of the guards nodded and opened the door. Inside, Velthara lay on a bed that seemed to be made of flowing water held in an invisible container. Her eyes were open, but they stared at nothing. When she saw the humans, she flinched. Please, Teho said softly. I'm sorry for what happened. I didn't mean to hurt you. Velthara's voice was barely a whisper. Hurt? You didn't hurt me. You terrified me. In all my years of reading minds, I have never encountered anything like yours. Dr. Nam stepped forward carefully. Can you describe what you experienced? Velthara's dark eyes focused on him. Imagine trying to read a book where every page is written in a different language and all the pages are on fire, and the fire is singing. That's what touching a human mind is like. But you were able to sense his emotions, Hyejin said. Yes, but they made no sense. He was afraid, but also curious. He was worried about his mission, but also excited by the challenge. He cared about people he had never met and was willing to risk his life for abstract concepts like peace and understanding. She sat up slowly, her face filled with wonder and confusion. How do you function with minds like that? How do you make decisions when you can believe contradictory things at the same time? Teho thought about it. I guess we don't see them as contradictory. We see them as complicated. Life is complicated. But that's impossible, Velthara said. Logic is logic. Truth is truth. You can't believe something and disbelieve it at the same time. Dr. Nam smiled. Actually, you can. Humans do it all the time. We know we're going to die someday, but we plan for the future as if we'll live forever. We know the universe is huge and we're tiny, but we act as if our individual choices matter enormously. Velthara stared at him. And this doesn't drive you insane? Sometimes it does, Teho admitted. But mostly it drives us to do amazing things. We create art because beauty matters, even if it doesn't help us survive. We explore space because we're curious, even if it's dangerous. We help strangers because it's right, even if it costs us. This is what my father tried to explain to me, Hyejin said quietly. Humans are the only species that evolved beyond pure survival thinking. Your minds are capable of caring about things that have no logical value. Velthara was quiet for a long time. Then she said something that chilled everyone in the room. My government will not understand this. When I report what I've experienced, they will assume humans have developed some kind of psychic weapon. They will want to destroy you before you can use it against them. But it's not a weapon, Somin protested. Isn't it? Velthara asked. A mind that can't be read or predicted or controlled? From the Velkari perspective, that's the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy. She looked directly at Teho. I need to touch your mind again. I need to understand how you think. If I can learn to explain human consciousness to my people, perhaps we can prevent a war. Is that safe? Dr. Nam asked. You barely survived the first contact. Velthara smiled, and for the first time it looked almost human. Probably not. But as your species would say, some things are worth the risk. The second attempt at mental contact took place in the station's medical bay, with every monitor and scanner focused on both Teho and Velthara. Dr. Nam watched the readings carefully while Hyejin stood ready to translate if something went wrong. Are you sure about this? Teho asked as Velthara approached. No, she said honestly, but I need to understand. My people have built our entire civilization around the ability to read and predict other minds. If humans can't be read, everything changes. This time she was prepared for the chaos. When her fingers touched Taeho's forehead, she braced herself for the storm of human consciousness. But even with preparation, it was overwhelming. The human mind was like standing in the middle of a city where every building was made of music and every street was paved with memories. She could sense his thoughts, but they moved in patterns that made no sense. He was thinking about the peace negotiations while also remembering a song his mother used to sing. He was worried about the future while feeling grateful for the present moment. But this time, instead of pulling away in panic, Velthara tried to follow the strange currents of his thoughts. She discovered something that shook her understanding of consciousness itself. Humans could lie to themselves and believe the lies were true. Taeho knew the negotiations might fail. He knew that contact between their species could lead to war. But at the same time, he genuinely believed that everything would work out fine. Both thoughts existed in his mind simultaneously without canceling each other out. When the contact ended, Velthara was trembling but not unconscious. "This is impossible," she whispered. "How do you believe contradictory things without your mind breaking?" "I don't know," Taeho said. "We just do." Dr. Nam was studying the brain scans with fascination. "Look at this," he said, pointing to the readouts. "During the mental contact, both of your brains were operating in patterns I've never seen before. Velthara, your mind was trying to organize Taeho's thoughts into logical categories, but his thoughts kept escaping the categories. It's like trying to organize a thunderstorm," Velthara said. "Every time I thought I understood something, it changed into something else." Boram Shin arrived that afternoon. She was a philosopher and xenobiologist who specialized in studying how different species thought. When she heard about the mental contact experiments, she insisted on joining the research. "This explains so much," she said, after reviewing the data. "We've always wondered why humans developed such complex brains when simpler ones would have been more efficient for survival. Now we know our brains didn't evolve just for survival. They evolved for something else entirely." "What?" Velthara asked. "Creation. Imagination. The ability to think about things that don't exist and then make them real. Every great human achievement started with someone believing in something impossible." Boram brought up images on the main screen. "Look at human history. We painted pictures on cave walls when we should have been focused on finding food. We built pyramids that served no survival purpose. We wrote poetry and composed music while empires fell around us." "That sounds inefficient," Velthara said. "It is inefficient, but it's also what makes us human. We don't just adapt to reality. We imagine better realities and then work to create them." "But how do you make decisions?" Velthara asked. "If you can believe contradictory things, how do you choose what to do?" Taeho thought about it. "We feel our way through it. We use logic when it helps, but we also trust our instincts, our emotions, our hopes. We make the best choice we can with incomplete information and contradictory feelings." "That sounds like chaos." "It is chaos, but it's organized chaos. Like a jazz improvisation, it sounds random, but there's a structure underneath that holds it all together." Velthara was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I need to report to my commanders. They're expecting an update on human capabilities." The report was sent through subspace communications that afternoon. Velthara described human consciousness as accurately as she could, explaining the contradictory thoughts, the emotional decision-making, and the ability to believe in impossible things. The response came back within hours, and it was not what anyone hoped for. Insu Kang, a Valkyrie military commander, appeared on the main screen. His face was harder than Velthara's, with scars across his temple that marked him as a veteran of the sector wars. "Ambassador Velthara," he said, his voice cold as space, "your report is disturbing. You describe a species whose thoughts cannot be read or predicted. From a military standpoint, this makes them extremely dangerous." "Commander," Velthara said carefully, "I believe the humans are genuinely peaceful. Their chaotic thinking is not a weapon, it's simply how they evolved." "A mind that cannot be controlled is a weapon," Kang replied. "We have maintained galactic peace for centuries by ensuring that all species think in predictable ways. If humans cannot be predicted, they cannot be trusted." "But they're offering genuine cooperation," Taeho interjected. Kang's dark eyes fixed on him through the screen. "Human, your species claims to want peace, but your minds are built for war. You can believe contradictory things, which means you can lie without knowing you're lying. You can act against your own self-interest, which makes your behavior impossible to predict or control. Those aren't military advantages, Bahram said. They're just different ways of thinking. Everything is a military advantage if used correctly, Kang said. Consider this: if we cannot read your minds, we cannot know your true intentions. If we cannot predict your behavior, we cannot negotiate with you safely. If you can believe impossible things, you might attempt impossible attacks. Belthara stepped forward. Commander, I request permission to continue studying human consciousness. I believe I can learn to understand their thought patterns. Absolutely not, Kang said sharply. You've already been contaminated by exposure to their chaotic thinking. I can hear it in your voice. You're starting to think like them. And he was right. Belthara realized that she was beginning to understand human emotions in ways that her own people couldn't. She was starting to feel things that had no logical basis. Curiosity about human art, appreciation for human courage, even something that might be called friendship toward Teho. I'm sending a fleet to extract you, Kang continued. The humans represent a threat to galactic stability. We will offer them one chance to surrender their dangerous mental capabilities. If they refuse, we will eliminate the threat permanently. You can't eliminate the way we think, Teho said. It's not a technology or a weapon. It's just who we are. Then we'll eliminate you, Kang said simply. The galaxy cannot afford to have a species that thinks in ways we cannot understand or control. The transmission ended, leaving the room in silence. How long do we have? Somin asked. Their fastest ships can reach us in 3 days, Belthara said quietly. But Commander, there's something you should know. Kang was my teacher, my mentor. I've known him for decades, and I've never heard him sound afraid before. Afraid of what? Belthara looked at each of the humans in turn. Of you, of what you represent. The Velkari have spent centuries building a galaxy where every species thinks in logical, predictable ways. You're proof that there are other ways to be intelligent, other ways to be alive. If word of your existence spreads, other species might start questioning why they have to think the way the Velkari want them to think. So this isn't really about military threats, Bahram said. No, Belthara said. This is about the fear that human consciousness might be contagious. And based on what's happening to me, she paused, touching her forehead where she had made contact with Teho's mind. I think they might be right to be afraid. Against all protocol and common sense, Belthara asked to continue the mind link experiments. I need to understand how you think, she told Teho. If I can learn to see the universe through human eyes, maybe I can convince my people that you're not a threat. This could damage your mind permanently, Dr. Nam warned. Human consciousness operates on patterns that your brain wasn't designed to handle. Then I'll have to adapt, Belthara said. Humans do impossible things all the time. Maybe I can learn to do them too. The training sessions began immediately. Every day for hours, Belthara would link her mind to Teho's, trying to understand how human thoughts moved and connected. At first it was like learning to breathe underwater, unnatural and painful. But slowly, something changed. On the second day, Belthara asked a question that surprised everyone. Why do humans create art? What do you mean? Teho asked. Art serves no survival purpose. It doesn't help you find food or shelter or mates. Yet every human culture creates it. Why? Yujin O had arrived that morning. She was an artist from Earth, brought specifically to help explain human creativity to the aliens. She carried a bag full of brushes, paints, and a small musical instrument called a flute. Art is how we share our inner worlds, Yujin said simply. When I paint a sunset, I'm not just showing you what I saw. I'm showing you how it made me feel. But feelings are private, Belthara said. Why would you want to share them? Because sharing them makes them more real. When you see my painting and feel something similar, we're connected. We're not alone anymore. To demonstrate, Yujin set up her easel and began to paint. But instead of painting a recognizable object, she painted abstract swirls of color that seemed to move even though they were perfectly still. What is that supposed to be? Belthara asked. It's the feeling of hope, Yujin said. Hope doesn't have a shape or a color, but it has a feeling. This is what hope looks like to me. Belthara stared at the painting for a long time. It's quite strange. I can almost feel something when I look at it. Something that has no logical basis. That's the point, Yujin said. Art bypasses logic and goes straight to emotion. It's a way of thinking without thinking. Seok Jun Yu, a Velkari scientist who had arrived to study the humans, was taking detailed notes. Fascinating, he said. You're describing a form of communication that doesn't rely on clear information transfer. Instead, it transfers emotional states? Exactly, Yujin said. She picked up her flute and played a simple melody. The notes were sweet and sad at the same time, rising and falling like a conversation between two lonely people. When the music stopped, Velthara was trembling. How did you do that? How did organized sound make me feel? What's the word? Melancholy? Music speaks to parts of the brain that words can't reach, Teho explained. It's like a language for emotions. But emotions should be private, Seokjun said, though he sounded less certain than before. They're internal states designed to guide individual behavior. Human emotions aren't just private, Yujin said. They're also social. We feel love for people we've never met. We feel sadness for tragedies that happened centuries before we were born. We feel joy when strangers succeed at things that don't benefit us at all. Dr. Yu was writing furiously. This suggests that human consciousness isn't designed for individual survival, but for, what would you call it? Collective experience? Maybe, Taiho said. We're social creatures. We've always lived in groups, shared resources, taken care of each other. Our minds evolved to care about the group as much as the individual. But that's inefficient, Velthara said, though she sounded less convinced than before. Caring about others who can't benefit you is a waste of mental energy. Is it? Yujin asked. She pulled out a photograph of a young child. This is my daughter. She's sick. I spend huge amounts of time and money trying to help her, even though it would be more logical to focus on my own career. But helping her makes me happy in ways that career success never could. Because you love her, Velthara said slowly, as if the word was foreign. Because I love her. And love isn't logical, it's not efficient, but it's the most important thing in human life. Something was happening to Velthara. Over the days of mental contact and human exposure, she was changing. She started asking questions about human customs, human history, human dreams for the future. She began to understand not just what humans thought, but why they thought it. And then something unprecedented happened. Velthara began to create. It started small. She rearranged the objects in her quarters in patterns that served no functional purpose, but looked pleasing. Then she began humming melodies that she made up herself. Finally, she asked Yujin to teach her how to paint. I want to try expressing something that has no logical basis, she said. Her first painting was terrible by any artistic standard, but it was uniquely hers. Swirls of blue and silver that somehow conveyed the feeling of homesickness for a place she had never been. This is impossible, Dr. Yu said, staring at the painting. Velkari don't create art. We appreciate logical beauty, mathematical patterns, functional design, but we don't create expressions of feelings that don't exist. Maybe you never learned how, Velthara said. Maybe your minds are capable of more than you think. But her transformation was causing problems. Reports from the Velkari quarters described her behavior as increasingly erratic. She was questioning orders, making decisions based on what she called intuition, and worst of all, she seemed genuinely happy in ways that Velkari psychology said were impossible. Happiness should come from achieving logical goals, Dr. Yu explained. Success, safety, status. But Velthara seems happy just existing, just experiencing things for their own sake. That's called joy, Teho said. It's different from happiness. Joy doesn't need a reason. But that's... Dr. Yu paused, struggling with the concept. That's terrifying. If you can be content without achieving anything, what motivates you to improve? Curiosity, Yujin said, wonder. The desire to share beauty with others. The hope that tomorrow might be even better than today. Not because of what we accomplish, but because of what we might discover. Dr. Yu was quiet for a long time. Then he said something that shocked everyone. I think I'm beginning to understand. And I think Commander Kang was right to be afraid. Why? Felthar asked. Because if this spreads, if other species learn to think like humans, it will change everything. The entire structure of galactic civilization is based on logical species pursuing logical goals in predictable ways. But if species start creating art, feeling joy for no reason, caring about abstract concepts like beauty and love, chaos, or freedom, Teho said quietly. That night, Felthara made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. She sent a message to her government, but not the one they were expecting. "I request permission to remain with the humans indefinitely," she said. "I believe I can learn things here that will benefit our species enormously. The humans are not a threat, they're an opportunity. They've shown me ways of thinking and feeling that I never knew were possible." The response came back quickly, and it was Commander Kang's voice, filled with barely controlled anger. "Absolutely not. You've been compromised by exposure to human irrationality. A rescue fleet is already en route. You will be extracted and undergo mental rehabilitation to remove the human contamination from your thoughts." "And if I refuse?" Velthara asked. The silence stretched for a long time. Then Kang said, "Then you'll be considered a traitor to your own species. The humans have turned you against your own people." "No," Velthara said, looking at Taeho and the others. "They've shown me what my people could become. What all our people could become if we're brave enough to try." When the transmission ended, everyone knew that the situation had moved far beyond simple diplomacy. The Velkari fleet was coming, and they weren't coming to negotiate. The Velkari fleet arrived exactly when predicted. 3 massive ships that looked like dark metal flowers blooming in the void. They took positions around Harmony 7, close enough to be threatening but far enough to avoid looking like an immediate attack. Woo-Seok Lim appeared on the main communications screen. He was older than Kang, with silver markings on his face that indicated high rank. When he saw Velthara standing with the humans, his expression became unreadable. "Ambassador Velthara," he said formally, "I am here to bring you home." "This is my home now," she replied, surprising everyone, including herself. Lim's eyes narrowed. "You've been infected with human irrationality. Look at yourself. You're creating meaningless patterns, expressing emotions that serve no purpose, questioning authority based on feelings rather than logic. This is not who you are." "Maybe it's who I was always meant to be," Velthara said. "Maybe all of us are meant to be more than just logical machines." "Impossible," Lim said sharply. "Velkari consciousness is built on order, logic, predictability. What you're describing is chaos." Taeho stepped forward. "Commander Lim, with respect, what if chaos isn't the opposite of order? What if it's just a different kind of order? One that includes things like creativity, love, and hope?" "Human," Lim said, his voice cold. "You will not speak to me of order. Your species has been alive for barely 100,000 years. We have maintained galactic peace for millions of years through logical governance and predictable behavior. Peace built on control isn't real peace," So-Min said. "It's just organized fear." "Fear keeps species alive," Lim countered. "Fear prevents war, prevents chaos, prevents suffering. Your creativity and love are luxuries that civilized species cannot afford." Dr. Yu, who had been quiet throughout the exchange, suddenly spoke up. "Commander, I've been studying human consciousness for days now. I believe you're wrong about their motivations." Lim's attention snapped to his fellow Velkari. "Explain." "Humans don't create art and music despite their survival needs. They create them because of their survival needs. Their creativity isn't separate from their survival instinct, it's part of it. They've survived as a species precisely because they can imagine solutions that don't exist yet." "Continue," Lim said, though his voice was wary. Dr. Yu took a breath. "Every great human advancement started with someone believing in something impossible. They imagined flying before they had wings. They imagined talking across vast distances before they had technology. They imagined healing diseases that had never been cured. Their ability to believe in impossible things isn't a weakness, it's their greatest strength." "That's still chaos," Lim said. "No," Velthara interjected. "It's hope. And hope is the most powerful force I've ever encountered." She walked closer to the screen, her face filled with conviction. "Commander, I've touched a human mind. I've felt what they feel. They don't just survive, they thrive. They don't just adapt to reality, they improve it. They don't just accept what is, they create what should be. And in the process, they destroy order," Lim said. "They transform it into something better," Velthara replied. "Commander, what if our perfect logical civilization isn't the end goal? What if it's just the beginning? What if we could learn to think like humans while keeping our telepathic abilities? What if we could have both logic and intuition, both order and creativity?" Lim was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was troubled. "You're asking me to consider abandoning millions of years of evolutionary success for an experiment that could destroy our entire civilization?" I'm asking you to consider that our civilization might be ready for its next evolutionary step, Velthara said. Yujin stepped forward with her painting, the abstract representation of hope she had created days earlier. Commander, look at this. Really look at it. Don't try to understand it logically, just let yourself feel what it's trying to say. Lim stared at the swirls of color and light. For a moment his face softened. What am I supposed to be feeling? Whatever you feel, Yujin said gently. There's no right or wrong answer. Art isn't about being correct. It's about being human. But I'm not human, Lim said. No, Tejo said, but maybe consciousness isn't limited to just one species. Maybe intelligence can take many forms and we've only discovered 2 of them. Dr. Nam pulled up brain scans on the main screen. Look at these readings from Velthara's mind during her training sessions. Her brain is developing new neural pathways, new ways of processing information. She's not losing her logical abilities. She's adding to them. Enhanced consciousness, Dr. Yu said wonderingly. Logic plus intuition, order plus creativity. It's not chaos, it's evolution. Lim studied the brain scans carefully. And the other humans? Do they all show these patterns? Every single one, Dr. Nam said. Human consciousness isn't an accident or a flaw. It's a functioning model of what intelligence can become when it evolves beyond pure survival thinking. But the risks, Lim began, are outweighed by the possibilities, Velthara said firmly. Commander, I've spent days learning to think like a human. Yes, it's chaotic. Yes, it's unpredictable. But it's also beautiful beyond anything I ever imagined possible. She gestured to Yujin's painting, to the music still echoing from the flute, to the complex emotions playing across every human face in the room. They've shown me that consciousness can be more than just a tool for survival. It can be a way of celebrating existence itself. Lim was silent for a very long time. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Finally, he spoke. I'm going to make a decision that my government will probably consider treason, he said. I'm going to trust you, Ambassador. Not because it's logical, but because... He paused, struggling with unfamiliar concepts. Because something inside me believes you're right. Commander, Dr. Yu said, startled. I'm ordering the fleet to stand down. We're going to establish a joint research station here, with both human and Velkari scientists. We're going to study consciousness, all kinds of consciousness, and see what we can learn from each other. Sir, came a voice from off-screen. The High Command won't approve this decision. Then they can come here and experience what I've experienced, Lim said. They can touch a human mind and feel what it's like to believe in impossible things. They can look at human art and feel emotions that have no logical basis, and then they can tell me that this isn't worth pursuing. Taiho felt something he hadn't expected, relief so profound it almost brought tears to his eyes. Commander, thank you. This is the beginning of something amazing. Yes, Lim said, and for the first time he almost smiled. Something amazing and impossible and completely illogical. Something very human. 6 months later, the joint research station was bustling with activity. Humans and Velkari worked side by side, sharing knowledge and perspectives that neither species could have developed alone. Some Velkari had learned to create art. Some humans had learned to enhance their telepathic potential. Velthara had become the first official ambassador between species, not just translating words, but translating entire ways of thinking. She painted abstract images of mathematical concepts and composed logical symphonies that somehow made perfect emotional sense. Other species throughout the galaxy were watching the experiment with fascination and fear. Some wanted to join. Others wanted to destroy it before it spread. But the humans and Velkari were no longer worried about what others thought. They were too busy discovering what consciousness could become when it was free to evolve beyond the boundaries of survival. They were learning that the universe was far stranger and more wonderful than logic alone could comprehend. And in that strangeness they found something that no species had ever achieved before. True understanding between minds that had evolved in completely different ways. It was chaos. It was order. It was impossible. It was perfectly human.